an emergency, red alert, alarm, alarm. We've been brainwashed over the years growing up to think a certain way, to count on systems that worked a certain way, but we were taught it worked a different way. Let me explain. So religion, doesn't matter which one of the religions, these are all man-made, and they're designed to keep you calm and keep you in line. Same thing with the working system, same thing with the education system. There's a structure in society. There's the elite class, which is the ownership class, and there's the managerial class, the people that we work for, and then there's the worker class. They literally call us the working class. If you're in the working class, meaning the poor and the working class, you want to move up as quickly as possible, especially in times of economic distress like we're in. When things are in an uptrend, like in the 50s and earlier, during that time, there was social cohesion. Everyone was on the same page, and there was more transparency. It didn't matter what class you were in. We're all in it to make money. Money was flowing down, trickle down economics was working just like it is. But what happens when things start to contract, you notice that, and there's so many reasons why they think things are starting to contract, whether it's one of which is that people are getting older, and the old folks are not dying like they were supposed to. I remember when, if you made it to 75, it was rare for people to make it to 75. Now we have a lot of people making it to 80s and 90s. Our presidents, like the last president was in his freaking 80s. Most of Congress are in their 80s. Okay, so we have, and then not only are these people that are elderly among us are getting older, they're also in charge. They have a lot of power. So what that means, and the way old people think versus the way young people think is like night and day. Young people are innovative. They want to socially climb. They have a long lifetime ahead of them. But older folks, they're very conservative. They focus on safety. They focus on keeping things the way they are. And then when you put them in charge, that's where you get the kind of policies that you're observing right now. But what religion did for us was distract us to think that it's moral, like there's a good or a good or evil, or right or wrong. It doesn't matter. None of that actually matters. What is that if you're poor, and I'm talking if you're poor and part of the working class, you want to get out of that. Like, you want to do whatever you can to move up, because what happens is the poor and the working class are the most dispensable. We're the ones who they get rid of quickly, whether it sends you to war, and it's usually useless wars like we're observing. Like some of these wars that have been going on for long, there's no explanation to them. You're just wondering, like, why are we fighting these wars nonstop? Well, part of it is because they got to get rid of the wealth. They've got to burn this money. There's so much wealth. First of all, the elite class, the ownership class, they're ballooning in number. There's so many of them. Okay. And so when you have so many rich people, so many owners, they exert so much pressure on the middle, the managerial class. The managerial class exerts more pressure on the poor and working class. It's a downward pressure. So this is why you get these scarcity, artificial scarcity. And, when you look around in 2025 with the amount of wealth that's circulating, you start wondering, why aren't social structures more reliable than they are? Why don't we have healthcare, reliable healthcare, reliable, first responders, like architecture and infrastructure? Why aren't these things there? Well, the reason is because that they have to keep this system the way it is, because if everyone is rich, who's going to be the one working? They need the working class. This is also why they import immigrants. Because what happens is a lot of us citizens, we know our rights and we speak up, and they don't, that's not conducive to be in a working class. They need people who are smart, obedient, and compliant. And if you're not that way, they're trying to replace you. And so that's why you're noticing a relaxation on immigration laws. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle is. Even in the current situation with Trump, there's this kerfuffle about immigration, and he seems to be tough on immigration, but then he turns around and he's also relaxed the immigration rules, because he noticed, and he's basically allowing for people who are working on farms and who are creating food, some of the immigrant workers to stay, because we have to keep the system going the way it is. And then wages keep getting suppressed. The point of keeping wages suppressed is so that you, the working class, don't get comfortable. Because if you get comfortable, then you stop working. It's just organic. It's the natural order of things. The more I understand this stuff, it's one, very depressing, because it's not what I imagined it to be. I just thought there was some moral compass in the way humanity works, that when you do the right thing, you do all of this, it's supposed to work out. But, we have to be pragmatic. When you read more, thanks to the internet, we're learning more, because our education system didn't teach us any of this. Thanks to YouTube, we're learning that these structures have existed. These systems have existed time immemorial. It doesn't matter. You can rewind time in history. This is how it works. There's an elite class, there's a managerial class, and then there's a working class. And you want to do everything you can to move up in that class system, because if you stay down here, you're the expendable one. And there's nothing you can do about it. This is the other depressing part, where you think, oh, we can vote it away. If we all vote and things going to change. No, it's not going to happen. Now, these are my opinion. I don't know. It's just based on the new information that I'm gathering. I could be wrong, but we've been voting and voting and voting, decade after decade, and nothing's changing. So it's pointing to the fact that this is the way things are. And the more money, I watched the stock market and it's booming, okay? Billions and billions of dollars. When these people get around the table, they just talk about billions. And I'm looking around like, are we talking about billions of dollars here? Why are people still poor? Why is everyone still suffering if there's so much billions? And I realized, well, when they're talking about billions, they're not talking about you. They ain't trying to give it to you. The people who are asset owners, they're getting those billions, and they're procreating, because the number one goal when people get money and wealth is to create progeny, have more children that they can hand that wealth to. So the elite class and ownership class is growing and growing and growing. And then they're exerting pressure on the managerial class, the people who run these businesses that hire you and I. And then because the managerial people, they don't want to get fired, or they don't want to lose their position, they have to put more pressure on us, because work more, work ridiculous hours, get rid of our benefits, and for less pay. It is what it is. You're not going to be able to change it. The more I think of it, I'm just like, okay. So it leaves you the only one, because let me tell you, these old folks that are in charge, they're not going to change anything. And the more wars that we keep observing, because the people who fight wars are the young people. So it's a compounding problem. They keep sending the young people to war, and the elderly are going to be in charge for a very long, for the foreseeable future, at least the next 2 decades. They're going to be in charge, because if you think about a 70-year-old, and modern medicine has made it so that 70 plus, people are living younger. I've seen. I'm in healthcare, and I take care of old people. And it used to be that when you take care of old people, they were weaker. I remember back in the day, people were a lot more weaker, but now You got 80-year-olds and they're just like, they're cranking out. They're at the gym working out. They're doing their thing. And a lot of them have wealth. Okay. A lot of them have pensions, and these pensions have to have money infused in them. So, and the pension funds are probably one of the most mismanaged funds, because the hedge funds and the Wall Street, the investment funds, they prey on the pension funds because they're more sophisticated. They get to hire the smarter people who prey on the pension funds and take money from it. And these pension funds are what's sustaining our elderly, our grandparents. Okay. So, and we can't let grandpa suffer. Grandpa has to have health care, has to have money to support his lifestyle. So what happens is the government extracts money from your education system, from your infrastructure, maintenance fund, from your healthcare fund. They extract the money and they put it in these pension funds because they're in charge. The old people are in charge. So they create the policies. So where does that leave us young folks? Young folks are still looking at it like, shit, I can't even pay my rent. I can't even buy a house. They want me to have children. They're not incentivizing me to have children. So it's like, so you're having young people contract and go like, well, I have to, it's a survival thing. They're not being selfish. They're just like, okay, I have to look out for myself. And a lot of them are dropping even further into like the poverty level and seeking welfare. But I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is to leverage the information that we have at our disposal online, because this is the edge that our era this time around that we have that didn't exist is AI. It helped, we can summarize data very quickly online. I have access to more information than I ever did. The internet, we need to use this information to make money. We have to get rich. Like there's an emergency to get rich. And I'm not even talking about, yeah, you can become a multi-millionaire. This is the beauty of capitalism, is there's no ceiling. Make as much money as you can, become a billionaire so that you become part of the ownership class. There's no monster. There's no boogeyman there. It's just that the ownership class, they're very powerful, that they exert pressure on the further down you are on the class strata. Okay. So because there's this, there's a lot of people online, conspiracy people who, make it seem like there's a boogeyman out to get you, or there's this, the way the narrative has always been, has been this scary thing where it's just like, it always seemed mysterious what's actually going on until you realize that no, there's no morality here. It's just like math. Unless there's a black swan event or like something that's catastrophic that resets the system, which has happened in the past, case in point, the world wars. Unless that happens, if things just keep moving the way they are, it's just going to get worse. If you're down at the lower level, things are just going to get harder and harder for you. That's it. Void of any catastrophic event, things are just going to get harder. These social systems are not going to get better. Wages are going to continue to get suppressed. The rich is going to keep getting richer, and the poor is going to getting poorer. The chasm, that gap between the rich and poor is going to get wider. That's it. So what does that leave you as a solution? You just have to get rich. We have to figure out a way to get rich. And thanks to the internet, it's not that complicated anymore. We actually, the solutions are the step-by-step guide and freedom of time and freedom of space to where you can take your family and go wherever you want to go, or work whatever kind of job you want to work, or not work at all, but just move up class. That's the goal. It's not activism. It's not bitching about it all day online. It's not complaining. It's not, conspiracy theories. It's not religion. There's nothing wrong with religion. I mean, it's calming, it's soothing. Meditation helps you even like get rid of the thoughts in your head. Cause there are people, I would argue that most of us have these voices or thoughts that circulate in our heads. But there are also people that are among us who don't have those inner dialogue. So let's not forget that we're all living this system together. And those people who don't have those inner dialogue, they also equally, they have their own issues, but they don't care about the fact that you have an inner dialogue. So, all these things, whether it's meditation, religion, family, relationships, those things, they have like, another tool out there to give yourself a more, a better quality of life. But the point that I'm trying to drum down is focus on getting rich. Focus on getting yourself out of the poverty level, out of the working class. That's where the emergency is, because that gets you out of the slavery, because basically we're just slaves. Let's just call it for what it is. We're all just like comfortable slaves. I argue we're not comfortable these days, but you don't want to be in the slave class. That's it. Okay. And no one's stopping you. This is also the other part, the optimist, the part that is also good. The optimistic part is like, no one's stopping you from moving out of the slave class. Okay. Because it would be different if the system was kind of trying to like suppress information on how to get rich, right? Now that would be some wild shit, right? Like if we didn't have access to YouTube to learn how to make money, right? Or how to, you know what I mean? Now we're talking about some serious problems right there, but they want you to get out of the work. They want you to get out of the slave house, because you get to generate, money. Because I don't care what to tell you, the elite class, they're actually the ones who create the economy. They create the jobs. They circulate the money, and you want them in your system, because if they leave the system, that's when things go bad. We court these people. This is where socialism fails, because you don't want to scare the elite class. You don't want to scare the ownership class away from your environment. We need them, because they don't have to stay here. They can go anywhere. The world is just their playground. They can choose any geographical location and go over there. So you want them here. You want those billionaires here, because they're the ones they generate the money. Okay. The lower you are on the social class, you're not generating anything. You're just taking. Okay, we're working, but we're not in charge. We don't make the rules. You can call it whatever you want. You can be mad, but you don't make the rules. And once you don't make the rules, you really don't matter.